Well, good morning, everybody. Or I think it's morning still. It's the last day of session, and so was the last day yesterday, or technically today, so it starts to blur together a little bit. But I did begin this session by noting the immortal words of Randy Bachman the last time that we met to talk about session, and said that you ain't seen nothing yet. And I think that I can confidently say I stand by that notion after this successful fall session. Since we formed government 7 months ago, 162 of our platform commitments have been met or are substantially underway. That's 162 promises in just 219 days. To put that in perspective, we are only 12% of the way into our 4-year mandate, but we have already delivered on 39% of our commitments. We've been accused by some even of doing too much, and I think that is exactly what Albertans elected us to do. As of today, we have implemented 92 of our platform commitments, and work is well underway on 56 more. We promised to repeal the NDP's punitive carbon tax on Alberta's families, to bring in the job creation tax cut that economists project will create up to 58,000 new full-time private sector jobs and grow our economy by over 2%. We promised to pass the Open for Business Act, bringing balance back to labour laws to encourage new job creation and to restore workplace democracy with a secret ballot vote. We promised to pass a red tape reduction law, appoint a red tape reduction minister, and cut job-killing red tape by 1/3 over 4 years, and we're well on our way to doing just that. We promised to bring in a skills for jobs agenda to quadruple the number of apprenticeship spots for high school kids and to increase support for trade training, because we believe a trade certificate is just as valuable as a university degree. We promised to create the Alberta Indigenous Opportunities Corporation to help get pipelines built by backstopping Aboriginal co-ownership of major resource projects. I could go on, but I think you got the idea. We are working tirelessly to rebuild and renew the Alberta Advantage and hold strong to our promises on jobs, the economy, and pipelines, and we are just getting started. And with that, I'm happy to take your questions.
All right, we use
Perfect.
how many promises did you break? Did you count those?
Well, I don't believe that we broke any promises. I believe that we have, first off, I'm proud of our party and our government for the platform that we ran on, which was very, very transparent, very detailed. Frankly, it's made my job as a minister and as a member of the government caucus, and in particular as the government House leader, much easier, because we have had a clear blueprint of where we would head when we came to this chamber when we formed government. The reality is we could have went the other way. We could have ran on a much more traditional campaign, listed a half a dozen or a dozen promises and traveled across the province. Instead, our premier, under his leadership, brought in a robust platform that we campaigned on, and we are working tirelessly to make sure that we complete what Albertans voted for.
One of the bills that was actually brought in was dealing with
Gibson either. So is that something you feel like this? How are people going to remember Bill 22?
Look, I can tell you that, well, first off, we did run on finding efficiencies within government, removing redundancies where we found it, and making sure that we could move forward and maintain services. In this case, to make sure that the chief electoral officer, who has done the job in this province for over a century, would still be able to maintain our election system, that it would still be arm's length from politicians as it should be, but at the same time be able to find efficiencies and make it work going forward. We were against breaking that role into 2 roles when we were in opposition. That's not a secret. I voted against it in the House. I spoke against it in the legislature when I was in opposition, as did all of my colleagues that were in the 29th legislature. So while specifically, obviously, we don't write every detail within the platform, we did run on finding efficiencies within government.
But at the end of the day, it was Lord Gibson that lost his job. And I think maybe there's some concern that if you're going to do it, then do it. But don't gaslight Albertans and pretend it was something else. That seems to be the criticism I'm hearing. Is there anything to that?
I disagree completely. We were clear. Both our legacy parties, when the decision to bring legislation to separate the offices into two different parliamentary offices was brought forward by the NDP. Both our legacy parties spoke against that and voted against that. And then fast forward to the actual appointment of Mr. Gibson, both our parties spoke against it yet again. We are clear and transparent that that's not the direction that we thought we should go. And to be clear, no other province has done that. Alberta was unique within that situation. And all that has happened is we have now taken our province and put it in line with every other province and the federal government inside this country.
On a different bill, dealing with the farm workers, the NDP is saying basically that there's no guarantee that they'll get any sort of minimum wage as farm workers. They could work for $1 an hour, basically. What do you say to that?
Well, I say yet again, it shows how ridiculous, in my opinion, the official opposition is. It also emphasizes yet again how they feel about farmers and ranchers. Farmers and ranchers are my neighbors. I'm proud to come from a rural community, and the idea that the official opposition thinks in any way that farmers and ranchers would go to just pay their employees a dollar is such a ridiculous argument. It's offensive to rural communities, and quite frankly, why the NDP have no rural seats, because yet again, it shows that they're just completely disconnected with rural Alberta. The reality is, and the Labour Minister will be happy to talk to you in more detail, that we are in line with several other provinces. We always had concerns with some of the way that Bill 6 was written up, not recognizing situations around the requirements of calving season and those type of things on farms. But the idea that, which is what we can now go back to how it was before in this province, but the idea that somehow farm and ranchers are going to go out of their way to pay their employees just $1 is ridiculous and quite frankly offensive.
Why don't you just eliminate the minimum wage?
There are lots of professions that fall under the same rules as the farmers within this legislation. It's a ridiculous argument by the NDP.
Karen?
One of the things that we're seeing today, actually, between the kerfuffle over the booking of the rooms and then the NDP not voting in a nonpartisan poll on MLAs, the bad feelings between your party and the NDP. So I was wondering if you could comment a little bit about the tone in the legislature.
Well, let's talk. I'm happy to talk about the tone of the legislature. I am very proud of the government caucus and the tone that they took inside this legislature. They have remained disciplined. Premier Kenney, and then before Leader of the Opposition Kenney, has done an incredible job of bringing decorum back to this legislature. Anybody who watches Question Period live, then talks to me afterwards, comments on it all the time. And if there's any decorum issues within the legislature, it falls on the official opposition, who at some points have had to apologize some of their members 4 or 5 times in a row within the chamber.
Whenever the opposition asks you in particular questions, you always go back at them with fear and smear, and you don't address the issues. Like we saw this a couple of days ago when the Premier was away, and every question you stood up and you said, "Oh, fear and smear, fear and smear." Yet, I mean, the opposition is asking questions that Albertans are expecting answers for.
Well, the problem is the opposition is making things up, and that's my point within Question Period. They're saying that the election commissioner office would not exist no more. They've accused the Minister of Culture of spending $35,000 on alcohol inside her office, saying that investigations would not take place, even though that has been made clear by the Chief Electoral Officer that they are going to take place. Saying that the Chief Electoral Officer said that there would not be a reduction by bringing the two offices together within the context of Bill 22, when the Chief Electoral Officer already said that there'll be a $390,000 saving. The NDP continue to, when they make things up or present things wrong to the chamber, we will call them on it, saying that teachers' pensions would disappear, causing fear within communities, saying that there was cuts to healthcare when there has been an increase to healthcare, and we now have the largest healthcare spending in the history of this province, saying that there's been cuts to education when there hasn't been cuts to education. I can keep going with the list for a while.
Not squabbling over the booking of this room, not adolescent behavior.
I don't know the process for booking of the rooms, but I can tell you this. I doubt your readers are too concerned with how we book rooms at the legislature. When I was the official opposition House leader...
You might not be interested in the room,
I'll finish answering the question. When I was official opposition House leader, I would go up after the government House leader and rooms would get booked. I've never booked a room in this place, full disclosure, so I could not tell you how it works. My understanding is the NDP did not follow the procedure, which caused some confusion. And, people that are ultimately responsible for the rooms can talk to you about that in great detail. But there's no intention to cause trouble for the official opposition.
Minister, I just want to build off that a little bit, though, because I think there's been a tone in the legislature, and I would push back and say that readers of our publications do notice this stuff, because I think there's a general concern that the two governing parties are not getting along, and I think there are some concerns like, what if something happens, like a big disaster in Alberta, and we need everyone to work together? There's a tone in the legislature. I'm wondering if you can comment on if that's going to change when you guys come back, or if we're going to see more of that.
Well, first of all, there has been cooperation within the legislature. I believe the NDP supported us on 6 pieces of legislation. We've also passed government motions making it clear that this legislature would stand up for firearms owners in this province and for the energy industry in this province. So there has been cooperation between the official opposition and the government on important issues to defend our province. Last sitting, the Minister of Energy, myself, and the Premier met with the official opposition leader and senators at Government House, building a coalition to stand up for this province to Bill C-69. So we are cooperating. Now, with that said, there are significant disagreements between our party and the official opposition. The official opposition wants to continue to spend money that we don't have. They want to continue to bring us down a path of massive debts. They want to continue to create situations where investment flees this province. Albertans disagreed with that philosophy. They sent us here to execute a different agenda that we campaigned on, and they voted for in overwhelming numbers back in April. And certainly there's going to be two disagreements between the two parties when it comes to those issues, particularly the ideological issues like finances or those type of things. That's our political system. And I can tell you this, the constituents of Rimbey, Rocky Mountain House, Sundre did not send me up here to go out of my way to spend my whole time trying to figure out how to find common ground with the official opposition. They sent me up here.
Language, like saying you've been fired, like people rejected you in overwhelming numbers, that kind of talk where you blame them for their time in government and you blame them for all the issues. Is that kind of stuff going to continue in the next session?
We will point out the differences between us and the official opposition when we need to inside the chamber. There are significant differences between the two parties. And yes, Albertans terminated the NDP from their position. The NDP, in my mind, from what I see inside the chamber, and I sit in there a lot, still haven't learned the lesson or understood why Albertans terminated from that. And from our perspective, continue to be angry at Albertans with that decision and spending their time in there, as I said, creating fear for Albertans and not focusing on doing their job as the opposition.
Mr. I think, to that point, I think people understand politics. They want you to oppose each other.
Correct.
But as Karen said, they hit you with 4.7 billion every question, and if I had a dime for every time you ended an answer with, oh, by the way, you were the one-term government, I could pay off the debt. So,
well,
and now you guys, and you're telling us now that you guys can't even book a room together.
First of all,
what do you think? What should Albertans make of the fact that, as Quinn said, you guys are don't you think you guys are coming across like squabbling adolescents? And it does happen. You do have a responsibility to at least project yourselves as adults.
A couple things. First of all, the $4.7 billion number is inaccurate. So that's our responsibility to point that out. Second of all, again, I will stress this. You know, my favorite part of the week, when you've been up here, and Ralph Klein talked about this, when you've been up here for an entire week, and all of us politicians and the media spend our time underneath this dome, and we think that these are the big issues of the moment. And then you get in a car and you drive back to Sundre and you go grocery shopping and you find out real quick that this is not what Albertans are talking about. Albertans want us to do the things that we promised, to balance the budget, to deliver on the platform commitments that we committed to doing, and that's exactly what the United Conservative Party is doing inside the legislature.
It doesn't send the message that you want to run the province, but you can't even figure out how to book a room with somebody else?
I would submit to you.
Something that's on the tip of the iceberg or something?
I would submit to you, Dean, that the NDP should follow the process to book the room, and my understanding is that they did not do that, and there were some mistakes in how they did that.
Take the first step, Minister, and will you agree that you will meet with the? Because apparently the NDP said they did the same thing. They block booked it too. They said it was a little bit more. But how about we put a hand across the aisle here? Will you agree to meet with your opposite member and you guys maybe work out something here? Because it does work best for everybody when we can use this room.
I meet with the official opposition House Leader on a regular basis during session and work with him on several issues, including the other day taking Bill 26, the new Farm Act, and bringing it all the way out of third reading back into committee of the whole because the NDP made a mistake and let it pass without completing their amendments. They came to us, showed us that they had made that mistake, and I brought that bill all the way back into committee of the whole. That is a great example of cooperation between the two parties. So we already work together all the time, all these issues. Now, look, I don't book rooms, and I know Mr. Billis doesn't book rooms either. I don't know the specifics of that situation. What I can tell you this is Albertans aren't concerned about how we book rooms. And
that's a point being made here. Why is your government repeatedly so confrontational?
our government is not confrontational. I think that's a ridiculous statement. And we will continue to stand up for Albertans. We will continue to stand up for Albertans against the official opposition when they are working against Albertans' interests. That's what we've been hired to do. And I have committed to my constituents I will continue to do. And I can promise you that that will not change.
Who do you govern for? Who do you govern for? The people who voted for you or for all Albertans? Let's try that again. Who do you govern for? The people who voted for you or for all Albertans?
Depends on the context of different decisions. I am the MLA for Rimbey, Rocky Mountain, Howe Sundre. Michelle, you asked a question.
Yeah.
I am the MLA for Rimbey, Rocky Mountain, Howe Sundre. Elected by 82% of my constituents to serve them in this place, and I will always serve them first and foremost as their MLA. Second, I am the Minister of Environment, and certainly we work on behalf of Albertans when we work on our cabinet portfolios.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.